Locatelli getting ready in the pit box. He's got his dry weather knee sliders on there, so everyone's expecting that it's going to be pretty good out there. At the end of the Supersport session, everyone was kind of starting to get down to representative times.
Yes, of the big guns, Alex Lowe's and Toprak Razgatlioglu are both out on the circuit. Good to see Alex Lowe's confirmed for his place for next season, and really as the experienced hand within that team, it makes sense to stick with a rider they know well. Of course, 5 years on the Kawasaki team as well, so yeah, just a continuation really, and it's been a successful spell for Lowe's.
Yeah, I was down chatting to the team after Cremona, and they were raving about the performance that their riders were actually able to do with the bike. Obviously, the results weren't there, but the consistency and the ability for the riders to get the most out of the package was something that they were quite keen to stress. And I think for Lowe's in particular, it's been a rough season this year compared to last year, whenever he was in the hunt for third in the World Championship, able to win races, have a lot of podiums. He hasn't started to ride any differently to he did a year ago, but the project is so new, and I think that one of the big things that will be quite interesting to see over the course of the next few months is what development happens for that package as well, because over the course of the first 4 rounds of the year, the one thing we can see is that bike needs some top speed, and we'll wait and see what changes happen for it.
Toprak Razgatlioglu and Bahatin Sefoglu both making their way straight back into the pits, so they've done a little shakedown and quite happy to let someone else dry out the circuit in this free practice 1. Moving on through the grid, Jonathan Rea made his comeback last time out in Cremona, and unfortunately didn't manage to put a point on the board. I think that was a bit of a reality check for anyone who thought he was going to immediately come in at a circuit that he hadn't raced before after missing the opening 3 rounds of the season on a bike he struggled to get to grips with last year, and be the Jonathan Rea of old. So scoreless weekend, but I don't think that's too much of a surprise to us here in commentary. This weekend he's been commenting to the media that he feels a lot stronger than he did even just a fortnight ago.
Yeah, it's one of those situations for Johnny where every week and every day he's making progress with his recovery from that injury. Misano's going to be the real test. That's the one place where he'll certainly expect to be at a lot closer to full fitness, full bike fitness, and ready to go. Having the wet conditions here, the damp conditions here this weekend, it might give him an opportunity to be able to spring a bit of a surprise. When you speak to Johnny, and I spoke to him for about an hour yesterday, one thing that he was keen to stress was that the injury couldn't have happened at a worse time for him, because over the winter he had made big step forward. When you look at winter testing, he was faster than Locatelli, and the performance and potential was there, and then suddenly for Yamaha with the super concession parts, they made a step forward, and he's now really playing catch up for that. So it's a shame for Johnny that basically that first third of the season's gone, and now he needs to start recovering and get some results, because it's contract time for him as well, and there's not a list of manufacturers knocking down the door to get the 6-time world champion on the basis of what we saw from him last year.
Andrea Locatelli just in front of Tito Rabat on the circuit there. The number 55 is the focus of the worldsbk.com feature interview in advance of this round. We were watching it just before we came on air, Steve, and Locke, I think pretty well set where he is at the moment, and we wait on announcements about next season, but he's got to be pleased with his progress this campaign. Obviously, to get the first win on the board, a major step forward for him. Yeah,
Locke has been able to show that he can lead the efforts of Yamaha and be a factory leader, and that's really important for him, obviously, to be able to give himself that opportunity. And I think for Locatelli, it's one of those situations where it's probably a good time for him to show that potential. He's obviously got his contract coming up and wants to make sure that he's able to lead a manufacturer. He's talked to BMW potentially about replacing Toprak. I don't really see a situation where he's not leading Yamaha next season, though.
Yeah, Locatelli making his way through. It would be a bold step to move away from Yamaha at this point, particularly after essentially he has established himself above the 6-time world champion as the #1 rider in that team. To go and move away risks your position, doesn't it, while we wait to see what else happens at Yamaha ahead of next season. Here's a man who's had good visits to Most in the past, who'll be looking for a good weekend here to kind of strengthen his claim for next season as well, Remy Gardner.
Yeah, Remy needs to have those good performances as well, because again, another rider looking to sort out his future, and he needs to be able to show Yamaha that they need to keep the faith in him. And I think that when you look at his performances versus Domi Aguilar, it's easier to make a case for keeping Remy, but he also knows that it's no sure thing. He needs to have those performances and needs to make that step.
Yeah, particularly the two last rounds. That's been important for Gardner. He's visited Assen, which is a circuit he's gone well in the past. He's capitalised on it. And last time out in Cremona, Eggerter had a nightmare. I think that's the only way to put it, only scoring points in race 1. So certainly Gardner's got the upper hand there, but only by 8 points over the 4 rounds so far. Eggerter probably had the stronger start in the opening 2 rounds, but it's now is the moment, isn't it, to get that done. Confirmation on your screen there that the Autodrom Most has renewed its contract, so this is the last year of a 5-year deal. Another 5 years now added on, so that will keep us here till 2030. Popular addition to the calendar in 2021, and you always say it's a unique circuit. It's the kind of place that MotoGP wouldn't visit. Obviously, they're back to Brno, aren't they, for MotoGP. And here in Most, we've had 4 years with no Czech MotoGP, and we've had a World SBK round here in little old Most. It's been a great place to come to.
Yeah, it's one of those rounds that every year we've come back to it. Everyone's been a little bit more excited about coming back as well. And I think that Most has been able to show that it really wants to host World SBK, and it's been a venue that's been able to give us good races as well, which has been a key thing. Just to go back very quickly to Yamaha as well. For GRT, one of the big rumours is what happens for them next year. Will Stefano Manzi move up from the Super Sport class? I was told that he's going to have a test at Misano coming up pretty soon. So he's already had one test on a World SBK bike. It didn't go particularly well for him, but Manzi's not known for being a great test rider. And it looks like Yamaha are going to give him another shot to be able to show what he can do.
I think 3 years proving his point at Tenkate and now dominating the World Championship. If he wasn't under consideration, he'd have to be starting to thinking about moving manufacturers, wouldn't he?
I just think you have to put him on a Superbike next year. I think he's shown that he's a class act in the Super Sports. And the one thing for him is he's had that success for Yamaha. You should reward him. And I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get a Superbike contract for next year.
Scott Redding, another rider who has gone well here in Most in the past. We think back to his determined last lap battles. Seems a long time ago. Well, it was a long time ago now, unfortunately for Scott Redding. Needs a good weekend here, because really, for him and also for Andrea Iannone, really the only time we've seen them genuinely be podium contenders has been Phillip Island all the way back in February.
Yeah, and the one thing for Iannone is it's a lot easier to be able to have a sponsor for him than it is for Scott Redding. And for Redding, Most is one of his best circuits. Then you've got Donington Park coming up, you've got Magny-Cours coming up. If he doesn't get good results at these rounds, then it's very difficult to see where he is for next season.
Yes, those 3 rounds, important ones, and also important for Toprak Razgatlioglu. They're great venues for him as well. Heading up towards the 10-minute mark then in free practice 1, and the first opportunity to head down to pit lane with our pit reporter Liam Hodgins.
Thank you very much, Alice. Good morning, everyone, and well, very cold morning here in Most. And Jose Escomes, down here with you in the HRC pit box. How's the last couple of weeks been? Obviously, Cremona was a very good round for Xavi Vierge. Obviously, Iker Lecuona showing good form as well. How are the team feeling and the riders feeling coming into this round?
Well, so far we are optimistic. It's true that this track wasn't historically wasn't the best for our bike, but I'm confident that we are working in the right direction, and we can repeat this good results from Cremona again.
Talking of the future for HRC, there's been reports in the media that potentially in talks with Jack Miller for next year. Obviously, the results of Iker and Xavi from the last round must have boosted their chances of potentially re-signing for next year. Can you just tell us what's happening with the contract market at the moment?
The fact is, like, we are, what I can say is that we are focused on this season. We are focused on the riders we have right now, and we are trying to go forward with all the things that we have so far. So this is the truth, and this is the fact. So we are just focused on race by race and the riders we have right now.
And what do Xavi and Iker have to do to remain for next year, and who potentially could we bring into the team as well?
They are doing the right thing. They are doing their best, as they have been doing always. So they don't have to do nothing special. Just keep doing their job, and the attitude they always has put on the team. So they don't. I don't think they have to do nothing in particular.
And of course, looking for this weekend, what's the target? Is it top 5s again, or do you think maybe potentially podiums could be on the cards?
It's a matter of going always forward, and of course. The target is to be top 5 again, and why not to go even further?
Jose, thank you very much for your time and all the best for the weekend.
Thank you.
Yes, reality for Honda is they have had a few good rounds now with top 5 finishes. Vierge, Lecuona pushing forward, getting in front of those independent Ducatis. And that inevitably sparks the question of, could there be another rider doing even better and making that next step to challenge the likes of Bautista to try and get the Honda up onto the podium? And it's a desirable ride, not just because of the budget that Honda has and therefore the salaries that they can afford to pay to attract a top rider, but also because the package is proving itself capable. And you know, they're outperforming Bimota, they're outperforming all of the Yamahas other than perhaps Andrea Locatelli, and as I said, getting in front of those independent Ducatis as well over the last few rounds. So Honda is an attractive option when we start to talk about the rider market in the coming weeks.
Yeah, if you're a rider manager, it's the one spot where you're really looking at, because there is potential there for good budget and decent results. It's got a good engine. The biggest issue they have is the team structure. That's been the problem all the way through for 6 years for Honda, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, because is it Jose Escomas leading the team, or is it still Alberto Puig pulling the strings from the MotoGP paddock? And that's one of those questions where you don't really get a lot of answers about who's got that full authority. And I think what's interesting is that Ivo Schutzbeck from Speedweek.com was reporting about the Jack Miller news, about the other options on the table from there as well, and that's Jonathan Rea that's gone down, and that looks like it's in the middle of the lap at turn 8, maybe the flip-flops just before the hairpin.
Bad news for Jonathan Rea, who made his comeback in Cremona a fortnight ago and has come down in the early stages here of free practice 1 in Most.
You can see there Johnny just losing the rear, but then because he's over the curb as well on the inside, just touching those white lines as well, and a lot of damage done there to the bike, and that is the last thing that Johnny needs and the Yamaha needs, because that's going to be the end of his session, obviously.
Yeah, the only consolation for him is that he slides off rather than the bike picking up and firing him off in the other direction. It could have been worse than it was in the end for him. Yes, the bike is obviously a write-off. We can see him dragging it away here. But for Jonathan, straight back up to his feet, which is good to see given the injuries that have kept him out in the first quarter of this campaign.
Yeah, and the injury came from the bike hitting them in Phillip Island. So for Ray, that's just track time he can't afford to lose. And that's a real shame for him. And that's going to put him on the back foot all the way through this weekend. The one thing is, obviously, track conditions not ideal. We're still about 2 seconds off dry weather pace, but there's still useful information to learn out there, particularly whenever you've got the new chassis parts for Yamaha that Ray isn't that familiar with.
And not least because these conditions could easily be replicated in the remainder of the weekend. You know, I don't know about you, but for us, it's almost like a 10-degree drop in temperature coming from the UK out to the Czech Republic at the moment, whereas usually we're used to coming a little bit later in the year, a little bit hotter conditions. There is forecast for, okay, not heavy rain at any point, but certainly potential for showers over the course of the weekend. That could spice things up a little bit here.
Yeah, the hose pipe ban looks like it's going to happen again in Ireland, and you know, you come here this weekend and suddenly it's a lot cooler. It's windy as well, and that's the biggest factor. Is we've got 12 degrees air temperature, but the wind chill is pretty severe around here. And last night, whenever we were leaving the track, it started to rain, and it was an icy cold rain as well. So it's a real difficult one for the teams and riders here this weekend, because if we end up having dry conditions, it's not going to get particularly hot first.
30 minutes remaining in free practice 1. I can tell you we've just been issued a notification of a red flag going out, and as you can see, the riders are now picking that up as well.
The reason for that is there's not that many service roads around Moss, so it might be just to try and clear away Ray's bike and then just get the gravel off the racetrack as well.
Yeah, I was going to say the gravel can always be an issue here as well, so we wait to see. But we've got a stoppage and the clock pauses at 30:09, and as soon as we can, we'll get back underway with this free practice 1. Potential for this to work in Jonathan Ray's favour, of course. There's the gravel. No surprises that it had to be stopped, because it would be like riding on eggshells through there, essentially.
Yeah, obviously enough, whenever you've got that much gravel, you've got no choice but to stop the session, and you can see the red flags there at the end of pit lane. For Jonathan, it probably won't make a big difference, because the bike still has to get back to the pits, and we'll see if they're able to get that bike back. The one thing about it is, and you can see Johnny there, he's perfectly fine after that crash, but obviously a little bit frustrated from it. And you can just have a look at the rear just comes around for Johnny there, and then suddenly, because of the way that the track layout is, and he just tries to get himself away from that bike as quick as he can. And I think Johnny can be forgiven for having a few flashbacks to Phillip Island with that crash, but at least he's able to come away unscathed from it.
Yes, we'll see it again here in super slow motion as well.
Just loses that rear so early through there, and it's a really tricky one for the riders because we did have the overnight rain. There's patches of damp at different parts of the racetrack, and just because it's so cold, 17 degrees track temperature, there's not really a tyre that works well in race conditions with such a cold track temperature, and then the wind chilling it even further.
And of course, as you saw at the end there, when the bike's digging in, it's flicking gravel up into the air, and that's all coming back down, landing on the circuit. Hence the stoppage here in Most.
That's also really the first time you're on the right-hand side of that tyre for a long time as well, because the start of the lap, you've obviously got the flip-flop right-left at turn 1 and 2, and then from that point on, you're really waiting until you get round to turn 9 to be really using the outside of that tyre. So for Johnny, that could have been a factor in it as well.
As you can see, big army of marshals out on the circuit to clear this gravel as quickly as possible, and then we'll be able to get back underway with free practice 1. And Liam in pit lane, what have you got for us?
Hi Alex, down here with Game Rory, just having a bit of a walk down pit lane, having an eye on things. Game, obviously great news yesterday, the renewal of Axel and Alex staying with the team for 1 more year. That'll be the 3rd year together. Can you just explain to us how excited you are to continue on the project with both Alex and Axel for 1 more year?
Well, it's not super excited point. It's basically continue a great job we are doing, and those two are achieving incredible performance. So it's basically there's no reason for us to change anything. It's more from them, because at the end, a rider always has sometimes private goals to achieve in his life. But this time, those two are super committed with the project and willing to really make great this idea to grow up the motor brand in the championship and in the world. And it's a ongoing project. It's the first year. We have a lot to do. And it's a pleasure to have those two riders with such level they are. We cannot show yet his potential, but okay, soon and on the way we are working, it can arrive.
What do we expect from the project in the coming rounds? Is there lots more parts coming, testing? What can you tell us about that, and how getting both Alex and Axel signed up so soon has helped commit them to the project?
Yeah, we have very clear items we have to improve. When you make a new bike and everything is new, it's always a lot of things change. The problem is the championship rules as now, it doesn't allow this kind of change. It needs to be worked together in parallel with mass production, together with super concession points that actually the calculation as it done doesn't allow us to really achieve this, because various points in the algorithm doesn't consider some points that for us should be important to consider, because we need something to perform or let us change to improve the bike. No? But it's quite complex, it's quite interesting at the same time, and we are trying to deal with all these and at the same time improve the bike and make it competitive.
We have a bit of time off between Most and the next round at Misano. Have you got any testing plans coming up? Anything that you really want to push forward?
Yeah, we have some items to test. Some of them to be implemented, some of them not yet, because not possible by the rules yet and the concession points and parts. But we are consistently getting parts to the project and test it. We need to understand that track time is not a lot, and we cannot go crazy testing many things, because the target number 1 is to give some stable bike to the riders to maximize the limits. So step by step.
Just finally, a quick one. Obviously, it's been maybe not the easy start to the season. Cremona, there was patches, especially from Axel, that there was a pace improvement. What are you expecting from here in Most this weekend?
Yeah, we did quite well, honestly, in some of the circuits, basically in most of them. But the way Superpole is organized, which if you don't get good Superpole, it fucks like sick all the weekend, because the race number 1, the race number 2, and then the Superpole race doesn't allow you to change a lot your position, and then it becomes super important to make a very good Superpole. And okay, this is, I think, it gives us some penalties in the races, the last rounds, that we could not maximize much more our potential, basically because the Superpole we could not mix all together. So, okay, we need to focus on that and try to make good job there to not penalize all the weekend.
Jim, thank you very much for your time and all the best for the weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Kim emphasising the importance there of Superpole. I'm sure we'll discuss that more tomorrow morning. But one thing I just wanted to pick up that was interesting about those comments from down in pit lane. The reality is that for Bimotor, they're in a different situation to other manufacturers, really. For most manufacturers, a new bike is an evolution of their existing package. Here, Bimotor are doing something completely new from scratch. And of course, there are those restrictions in a production bike championship in terms of what you bring to race. You've also got to mass produce. So if you want to make a change or an evolution, that requires you to then make another huge investment in order to produce enough models to satisfy those regulations. And super concession parts, well, okay, but we're only a third of the way through the season. So there's a reality there as well about accumulating the points to make changes too.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a strange one, really, because the fact that Bimotor being treated as not a new manufacturer is obviously something that's given them a bone of contention. With such a new project, to have limited testing with it, I think that they obviously felt that they would have been due more test days and different concessions. But at the end of the day, it's one of those situations where we'll wait and see what happens for it down the line. They need to make sure that they're able to give themselves those opportunities to be able to make the progress.
So free practice 1 on pause at the moment with a red flag out, but as you can see, pit lane is about to open. It might get a little bit busier on the circuit now. We've still got 5 riders who haven't set a time, and a fair few haven't set a competitive time yet in this session either.
Yeah, and you could see the wind there as well, just the flags and different things, just how strong it is and how cold it is as well, based on the fact that anytime we've seen a close-up of the crowd, they're all trying to huddle up together. But for the riders now, this will be an interesting half an hour to see what happens. You can see for Jonathan Ray, let's hear what he has to say. Johnny just saying there he was lucky that it didn't grip, because if it had gripped he would have gotten thrown in the air. Paul Denning saying it's a strange crash, and obviously for Johnny and for Yamaha it's likely to be the end of the session for them. You can see here for Johnny just how early he loses that, but the rear just comes round on him, and it could have been an awful lot worse for him. Yeah, that's what I was saying at the time we watched the first replay, that had the bike picked up, it would have fired him off even more dramatically. Actually, the low side in the end was relatively okay. The bike, according to our GPS tracker, is being brought back in, so it's actually quite close now to being recovered, but 29 minutes to go in free practice 1 before that bike is returned to pit lane. Yeah, and a lot of work to be done to get it ready. Teams work really efficiently, and Yamaha have been able to show in recent years just how good of a job they can do. So we'll wait and see if Johnny's able to get himself back out there, but you'd have to think with a half an hour left in the session, it's going to be very unlikely that we're going to see him back out in the session. They'd be hoping that maybe right at the end of the session they're able to go out and just do an outlap, just to be able to make sure that the bike is able to do its installation. But even then, you'll run out of time very quickly, and 28.5 minutes left in the session. And we can see Scott Redding making his way around, and mentioned it earlier on, Alex, about the importance of this weekend for Scott Redding. The reason for that is Most is one of the best circuits that we go to for him. On the BMW, he was able to have good results here. Obviously very strong in the Ducati in his first 2 years, but Redding needs a result now, because there's questions being asked about not just him, but also what happens for the Bonovo team, because they need to make sure that they've got a top rider on that bike. If you're spending all that money to have a Ducati, you need to be able to have the results. Yes, the only thing that works in Redding's favour is the fact that Giannone hasn't exactly lit up the season either. So there is obviously a challenge there for those independent Ducatis. Scott Redding, 3 top 5 finishes in Phillip Island, first time out. He felt that he could, with a little bit more good fortune, have made his way onto the podium. And for Redding, after that, the only good finish really has been a 6th place in the Superpole race. Other than that, just a couple of top 10s, the best of his performances. Yeah, the problem for Redding is more so the fact that while Iannone has also struggled, Iannone has been very vocal about the issues he's having and changes within his pit box already through the first third of the season. But the problem for both of them is Petrucci is up there consistently challenging at the front. Sam Lowes has had a pole in the front row and a podium and been very consistent through the course of the season. And for Ian O'Neill and Reading, they just haven't been able to perform like that.
Riding on board then for a lap of the Autodrom Most here with Niccolo Bulliga.
Down in towards turn 1, the heavy braking zone, and then you come back across yourself into turn 1 and 2. And from this point onwards, this is where Most goes back to its original layout. It used to be a really fast left-hander at turn 1, and then you're into this section of the track with the changes of direction. The Ducati is a very nimble bike for Bulliga and for Bautista and the other riders, so it's quite easy to change direction through here. The bikes like the BMW are a lot more difficult and a lot more physical to ride through this section of the track. But you can see just how you're picking up one line to the next through these corners and trying to just get through this section. Most is a very technical track because we've got so many corners around here. We've got 21 corners around this track and lots of little undulations as well. It's a very old school circuit. It reminds a lot of the riders of racing in some of the British Championship tracks like Brands Hatch and places like that at the end of the lap. You can see through this section of the track now for Bulliga down in towards turn 15, one of the key overtaking opportunities underneath the bridge, and then into this change of direction again where you've got the left-hander at 16, and then this is the section where they've made some small changes to the layout as well. Through the next left-hander they've opened it up ever so slightly, and then down in towards the last double rider at the end of the lap, turn 20 and turn 21, which is basically one corner for these riders. You can see for Bulliga here, heads in towards the first of these right-handers, and then you just drift up towards the outside curb and then back in towards 21 to finish off your lap. But Most is it's an action-packed lap for the riders. There's an awful lot condensed into this. That's Ian O'Neill down.
Andrea Iannone has fallen at the final turn in free practice 1.
And he lost it early. You can see the wing in the middle of the track there for Ian O'Neill. So judging by the way that he's lying there as well, that looks like it would have been a high sider through there. There were damp patches through that at the start of the session, and you can see for Ian O'Neill just gets thrown over the top there and lands very heavily. So for Andrea, we'll see just what sort of condition he's in, but he's looking pretty prone there with his right arm.
Looked to be in some discomfort, didn't he, on the outside of the circuit, as we saw him with Niccolo Bulliga coming past him there off the final turn.
You can see the airbag went off straight away for Ian O'Neill, and that does offer a lot of protection for the rider for collarbones and ribs and different parts of their body, but for Ian O'Neill, it did look like he came down pretty heavily on that right-hand side, and the way that he's holding himself there, that's obviously where there was a big impact for him.
Yeah, hopefully everything okay for Andrea Iannone. I'm sure we'll see in live pictures in a couple of moments' time how he's getting on, but I can tell you that in the meanwhile a red flag has been thrown here, the second of this free practice 1, to bring once again a stoppage to the session. 24 minutes on the clock, and we pause there while we wait to see if Andrea Iannone is okay. Just being
that's Remy Gardner down as well. That's Remy in there as well at the same time, and that would be why we've got the red flag. The fact that there's 2 riders down there as well, so we'll have to wait and see what happened for Remy there. But
I assume that's a separate incident subsequent to the Iannone incident.
Yeah, it's after it, but the red flag had come out. You can see Jonathan Ray's bike back in pit lane as well, so Yamaha will be able to take advantage of this red flag delay as well to buy a little bit more time.
Yeah, I did say previously that the bike had been brought back into the infield. It's one of the challenges, isn't it, that the Autodrom Most, it's the infield where the pit buildings are and so on. So to actually get the bike inside the circuit is the first challenge, and then after that it can be brought to pit lane. So yes, the number 65 is now back in the pits. And a second red flag and second stoppage of this free practice 1 session. And at the moment we just wonder what has gone on, because we haven't had the opportunity to see it live, so I don't want to speculate too much about what might have happened there. But certainly Andrea Iannone going down, and then Remy Gardner subsequent to that, and Gardner up to his feet, stalking his way through the grass, and that's good news. Previous shot we saw Andrea Iannone was being helped up to his feet as well, but Iannone obviously in some discomfort after his spill there. See again there, these are live pictures of the final turn. This is the reason for your stoppage, and not least because the bikes are very close to the track, because Iannone's obviously come down, and then Gardner as well. So just the right thing to do there, just to neutralise the session and avoid any further dramas.
Yeah, and you can see how close Ian O'Neill was to Remy's bike as well, so that's a lucky escape there for Andrea. But good to see he's up on his feet, and look, he was just being helped away by the marshals there, so just limping away a little bit.
Let's head into the pit boxes, then we catch up with some of the leaders in this free practice 1 session as we head towards the halfway mark. We're currently paused on the clock at 24 minutes 21. Toprak Razgatlioglu it is who leads the way. 1 minute 32.857 his fastest time. Remember the lap record here is 1 minute 30.064, so we are some way still off the dry weather pace. 3/1000ths of a second behind Toprak Razgatlioglu. Alex Lowe's, we saw him in his pit box just a couple of moments ago. And Danilo Petrucci rounding out your top 3. Saw on board with Nicolo Bulliger for his first flying lap. Of course, everyone now back in the pits with 24 minutes remaining in this FP1.
Yeah, it's interesting to see some riders have been able to get a lot of laps in. Montella's done 11 laps, Zaidi's done a dozen laps, Alex Lowe's done 10 laps already at this stage. So for the riders, they're just trying to get themselves ready for the next session, for the session to restart as well. But for down in the Honda pit box, Xavi Vierge there, we heard from his team manager at the start of the session. And for Vierge, he's been on a good run of form lately and just trying to give himself that opportunity to be able to maintain that form here at Most. And it was interesting in the build up to this round. Iker Lecuona talking about the fact that at Most he doesn't know whether he loves or hates the track based on some of his past experiences here. But for the Honda riders, they know that there is progress being made for the team and for what they've been able to do with that bike and package, and they need to make sure that over these next few rounds that they're able to show what they can do, because for Lecuona and Vierge, they've been so closely matched over the last few years that if one rider stays, they really need to show why it should be them that stays. And I think that's one of the big challenges that both of those Honda riders are facing right now, and a lot of pressure for them to be able to have those performances.
Yes, and at this time of year in particular, you know, whenever we get to Misano, that's where we start to talk about, you know, signings and so on. But much earlier this year, just because the fact that everyone is out of contract basically at the end of this season. I think only Ryan Vickers had a deal that carried him into next year. Obviously, now we've had the two promoters confirmed, and there are plenty of riders that we think will stay put. Alvaro Bautista most notably saying that he's told Ducati he wants to continue on into next season, so just waiting for news from their side now. So that's half of the deal done, as it were. Nicolo Bulliger looks like a shoo-in when you're leading the championship for Ducati. It's unlikely that he's going to look to move, particularly if he's given a carrot of MotoGP testing opportunities next season. And the independent Ducatis, well, Danilo Petrucci has no real reason to move. It's not necessarily expected that he's going to be courted by factory teams, and he's going pretty well at Barney at the moment. He sits in 5th in the World Championship and only, 18 points behind Alvaro Bautista, 3rd in the world. No real reason for him to move. Some of the wantaways might be the likes of Andrea Iannone. He's expressed some of his frustration in recent rounds, just doesn't seem to be getting the performance that he has quite hoped for. And then obviously remains to be seen who will want those factory Honda bikes that become among the most attractive, certainly ahead of next season.
Yeah, I think that there's no doubt that for a lot of riders that the Honda will be something that interests them a lot. And you can see Jonathan Ray here, just with his electronics engineer Davide, just trying to get their feedback on what caused that crash for Johnny. We heard from Johnny just saying that it was a lucky escape, that it didn't grip up. We heard Paul Denning say that it was a very strange crash as well. So for Yamaha, they're just trying to figure that out right now and be able to make their progress. We heard from Andrea Locatelli down there as well, how a crash like that can really impact on the weekend for a team and a rider as well. So it's a big challenge for Yamaha now to try and make sure that they're able to have a strong weekend for Ray. But the fact that he's in his civvies shows that he's not expecting that bike to be ready in time.
Free practice 1, 24 minutes 21 on the clock when we do get back underway. At the moment, we've got a stoppage as a result of track conditions at turn 21, following a spill for Andrea Iannone and then for Remy Gardner. In the meanwhile, let's head down to the pit lane once again with Liam Hodgins.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm here at BMW with Chris Buncher after a little bit of the stoppage. Chris, it's been a tricky start to the session here. Obviously, the riders are back in the pits. Can you just explain to us what the feedback has been from both Toprak and Mikey with the track conditions out there?
Well, both for sure confirmed what everybody could see outside are tricky conditions. It's not due to patchy conditions like wet, dry. It's definitely slippery, some dirt on the track, quite dirty, so you have to be careful and gentle on the bike. the racers don't want to be gentle, they don't enjoy, then you don't go fast, so they just have to survive until now. Therefore, the feedback until now is not very useful for them and not for us. So it was good to see them back in the pit box fully healthy, and hopefully all the other riders crashed outside are okay.
It's good to see that they're okay. Talking of this weekend, after 4 rounds, we've had 2 fuel flow limit incursions on you. Can you just explain to us how you're both feeling, how the team is feeling, how Toprak is feeling, how Mikey is feeling, especially after getting some laps under the belt? And do you feel that this is going to be a big detriment to you and BMW?
Well, this we cannot judge yet, because there we didn't have enough laps. Now in FP1, constant laps, not full pace laps. So we have to see the effect of the fuel flow limit reduction. About the feeling, you can imagine everybody wants to go full. Getting a penalty is not always nice, or never nice, to be fair. But we respect the rules and try to keep fighting. For sure, we want to beat our competitors, and let's see what the rest of the weekend will bring.
Was it a bit of a surprise for you that you got the fuel flow limit, or were you potentially expecting it and you were prepared for it coming into this round?
Well, we were partly expecting due to the algorithm, but for sure we are surprised. The penalty is based on overperforming judgment, and looking on the last races, I guess everybody saw the same races, so we were a bit surprised about getting the same penalty, but it's based on the algorithm. So as long as it's like this, we are aware of it. We keep on fighting, but hopefully it will change in future.
Yeah, Toprak's doing a lot of that, potentially giving you the limits. Just looking ahead to this weekend, obviously talking of Toprak, he pushed Bulliga a lot in Cremona. This track, I was speaking to a couple of members from the team, should suit the BMW a little bit better, with Toprak also being the most winning rider here. Are you expecting to take the fight to Bulliga, and do you think you can claw back some of those points this weekend?
Well, we definitely hope for and we'll work hard for it, but reflecting last season to this season, we see that everywhere we come, we cannot use all our knowledge from the past, not all our data. We have a new bike package for 25, so the fuel flow limit, the regulation change makes it to a new game, so we have to learn new, fight more and work more than expected. Therefore, I hope for some successful racing, but I cannot predict. We will see on Sunday evening.
Chris, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully all the best for the weekend.
Thanks, see you back.
Steve, just wanted to pick up with you about the fuel flow regulations. Obviously, those are our biggest tool, as it were, to create balance and parity between the respective manufacturers. The aim is to give us a competitive field at the front to Production Bike Championship. The comments, obviously, from BMW are that they don't want to lose the same amount as Ducati, because at the moment they feel that they've got a performance deficit, and I think that's quite fair. Certainly in 3 of the 4 rounds, the Ducatis look much stronger than the BMW Portimao. They were very evenly matched, and Toprak around there was able to make the difference to win those 3 races. But and certainly if you're in one of the, if you're Michael van der Mark or if you're one of the lower ranked Ducatis, then you're not feeling too delighted about it at the moment. But that's the reality of the algorithm and the tools they've got to work with for the moment.
Yeah, it's a really strange situation, because I think it's quite clear that the Ducati is the best package right now, and for BMW, they already feel that they're hamstrung by not being able to use their super concession frame from last year, and then suddenly they get pinged the same amount as Ducati for the fuel flow. The fuel flow is an interesting one, because as it is right now, you're losing a little bit of your top end 5th and 6th gear revs, really, in reality. And for the teams, is it making that big of a difference? For Ducati, they got their extra 500 revs anyway last year to be able to try and negate the difference for this. So it's a very strange situation, but it will have an impact the more and more that they lose. And I think that's probably one of the big things, is that for Nicola Bulliga, he said that whenever they lost the half a kilo per hour previously, it just made the bike feel a little bit different whenever he opened the gas compared to what it felt like before that. Now, after today's sessions, we'll be able to find out exactly how they feel with another half a kilo having been lost. But I think for BMW, you can hear from Chris Gonchar there just how difficult it's going to be for them as well.
Liam, you're down in pit lane, and it's a relaxed atmosphere, and I understand you can even give us some rider interviews now, such as the delay here in Free Practice 1.
Yeah, no, it's a very cool, calm, collected down here, and I'm talking to probably the most cool, calm and collected rider on the grid, Andrea Locatelli, down here just outside of Pata Yamaha. And Andrea, it's been tricky conditions so far for the riders. You were just behind the incident you were telling me of Remy. Could you just explain to us what happened when you're coming through the final corner?
Yeah, honestly, I was a bit scared because I see just Remy. I don't see which rider was already on the ground, but I see Remy make a big side. I see immediately the yellow flag, but I don't see the bike that was out of the last corner. Then I see Remy make a big side. I was scared because the bike of Remy was like cutting the marshal. So yeah, it was a bit strange crash. I don't know what happened on the last corner, but for sure the track condition at the moment is not so good. It's a bit dirt, and also especially when we stop and restart, the tire is completely dust, and so yeah, let's see. But we take step by step and looking to prepare better the weekend.
Yeah, the conditions out there are very tricky. Where particularly is it at its worst, and how much are you pushing in these early stages in FP1?
I think the big problem at the moment is the condition, not only of the track, but also the weather cars, because the air is not so warm, so the temperature of the tire going down immediately. So it's quite complicated to ride. You need to ride step by step. You need to take confidence with the bike and not make mistakes, because I see many crash on the beginning of the session, and we was restarting after first red flag, and immediately two riders crashing. So yeah, especially on the right side, we need to be a bit more careful, because yeah, sometimes in some corner we cannot warming really well on the right side, and yeah, it's a bit tricky. So let's look in what happened during the session. But yeah, it's important to get the confidence and feeling with the bike and try to learn something.
Looking ahead to this weekend here at Moss, obviously we've seen in the past that the Yamaha performed very well around here, and yourself, you were Victor 2 rounds ago. Do you expect this to be a better round for you and Yamaha compared to Cremona?
Yeah, for sure. It's on a good track. We was on the podium last year, so why don't try again? For sure, we need to work in well, not make a mistake. Try to make a good qualify, and then try to fight for the race.
I see you're getting some signals to go away, so yeah, I guess the session's about to get underway. Thank you very much. All the best.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was him getting the signals to go away so much as you, Liam. But anyway, Andrea Locatelli being called back to action. And it is always great to have the opportunity to hear from riders. It's rare in a live broadcast, of course, because they are busy doing their job. And we're going to be busy doing our job now while we wait to go back on track in free practice one. Andrea Locatelli, race winner at last. Attempt number 154 after those 153 attempts that hadn't yielded the first win. But he's got that off his back now. Cremona was a lot more difficult, to say the least. Very different circuit characteristics. It's the tightest venue we go to, and obviously off the high of Assen, it was going to be difficult to replicate that anyway. Important now for Locatelli to get back to where he has been, frankly. He had the podium in Portimao as well, top 5 finisher regularly there. 3 times inside the top 7 at least in Phillip Island. It was more difficult to be at the front there because of Redding and Ionone's performance more than anything about Locatelli. But if Locatelli's up there best of the rest, sort of P4 and nibbling away, hoping for an opportunity to get on the podium, that's about the maximum expectation at the moment for the Yamahas.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable expectation for them to think that they're going to be in the mix for podium contention. But the one thing in World SBK now is everything is conditioned by what you do in the Super Pole session. If you qualify well, you have a good weekend. If you qualify down the field, you have no chance, and that's really the reality for everyone. What's good to see, though, is that on our timing screens just saying that 90 seconds pit lane will open. Yes,
very good news for all concerned. Just the other thing I was going to say that your weekend is conditioned by is the reality that you've got Nicolo Bulliger. He's going to be difficult to beat everywhere he goes. Toprak Razgatlioglu, he's a mean competitor as well. Rarely off the podium. 4 times off the podium this season so far. And then Alvaro Bautista, run of 5 consecutive podiums. Obviously had 2 in Phillip Island and Portimao as well, so 9 podiums for him. Razgatlioglu up there on 8. Bulliger with 7 race wins. So just breaking into the top 3 at all is going to be a challenge for most of the other teams and riders.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, especially when you look at how many strong Ducatis you have. Petrucci can be up there. Sam Lowe's has been strong recently. We're at one of the better tracks for Scott Redding, so he can get himself into the mix. Montella's been able to show well at different times through the season so far. So it is very difficult to give yourself the opportunity to be able to fight it out for a podium spot. And World SBK right now is just really competitive. When you look all the way down the field, you're looking at guys that have won world championships that are outside the top 15 at the end of races. So not even scoring points whenever you used to win a world championship is a real challenge for a lot of riders mentally to have to deal with.
Yeah, look at Garrett Gerloff, for example, very successful here in the past in Moss. Change of manufacturer for him during the winter, and now he's scrapping it out at the back of the field with some of World SBK's rookies, and that's going to have to be tough to take as well. A podium finisher previously in World SBK. Just want to see him squeeze something out of that bike this weekend. Moss, the venue he enjoys. He's had great performances, of course, in Magny-Cours in the past. That's still to come. There are a couple of opportunities for Gerloff at his best track still to come for him to make an impression. As free practice 1 then gets back underway with Toprak Razgatlioglu leading the way ahead of Alex Lowe's and Danilo Petrucci. Petrucci among the first riders out onto the circuit, as is his teammate Jari Montella. Garrett Gerloff we already saw making his way out onto track. And back up and running now, which is good news. A protracted start to the day. Obviously, 2 red flags already. First concern is for the riders who've gone down there. Did have notification of Iannone making his way to the medical centre. That's standard practice as well after a spill like that.
Yeah, and the one thing is that obviously here in Most, when we've had these couple of crashes, Iannone is a different situation just because of where he's crashed and the fact that he was clearly in discomfort. But it's very easy for the gravel to be dragged across the track as well. We saw that for Jonathan Ray's crash. So it is something we're going to have to keep an eye on all the way through the weekend as well.
As we make our way round in free practice 1 here.
There's been enough complaints already about the Superpole format from the likes of Danilo Petrucci after traffic last time out in Corona. And it'll be interesting to see how that all-important 15-minute session runs tomorrow morning.
The thing is, the Superpole, so there's 2 things to that. One part is Cremona is the shortest venue on the calendar. It's a tight circuit. It's going to happen. You've got to manage your time. You've got enough time to get a lap in there. The other part is that they've already made one concession to the riders by allowing them a second tyre. There's not really much more they could do now. Because, you know, you've got a field of 23 riders and the circuit is the circuit that you've got. I'm not sure what more they could do other than a one-shot qualifying, a sort of shootout. But that brings its own challenges as well.
Yeah, and then riders will complain that it was dry at the start of a session, wet at the end of a session, or vice versa, and my lap time was compromised by the lack of rubber down on the racetrack or anything like that. So there's never an ideal situation, and every complaint that you ever hear about rules and regulations and formats, it's all based on recency. It's all based on what happened to you at the previous round, and you see the fact that it didn't work out for you. And that's what motivates teams and riders to be very vocal about their complaints.
That's the reality for Petrucci, isn't it? He was 13th fastest. There were 12 riders who did get a lap in ahead of him. So, you know, everyone had the same conditions on that occasion. To be fair, I don't think he made a huge thing of it, but it certainly compromised his weekend, and he was able to make steps forward gradually as the weekend went on. I think probably 4th place was the limit anyway for Petrucci, and he got the 4th place in race 2. He was 6th in the Superpole race, and even from a place on the 2nd row of the grid, he couldn't really challenge Alvaro Bautista. So I think 4th place was the limit for him there. Getting up onto the podium, I said it previously, it's going to be a challenge when you're going up against Bulliga, Razgatlioglu and Bautista.
Yeah, it's always, whether it's a situation like the Superpole session or the moves for MotoGP riders to be able to test their bike whenever they're coming back from injury, it's always motivated by what will help you at any given time. And I think that for me, the Superpole format we have now is the best format we've had in the 10 years I'm working in the championship. And the 1-lap shootout Superpole sessions of the 90s, they were great for their time. I don't think that they'd work with now. And I think it's one of those things where you're trying to figure out what's the best situation you can use to determine the grid that will still allow you to have a little bit of jeopardy during the session. And I like the 15-minute format. I think it's a very exciting 15 minutes of action where you know that there's pressure on you. And I thought that Portimao really showed that to the best extent, where Alex Lowe's has a crash during his first lap, yellow flags are out for his second lap, he qualifies down the field, and his weekend is then compromised. But afterwards, he knew that he shouldn't have crashed on his first lap. You've got to make sure you get your lap time in.
It's important to have some risk in the Superpole sessions. You think about, you know, a different class like Supersport 300, for example, that you can qualify pretty much anywhere, and as long as you're still part of the group of 15, it doesn't really matter. I think it's quite good that, you know, you'll be compromised in the Super Pole race, then it'll be difficult for you to improve your grid position for race 2. I think it works pretty well. The other thing with a one-shot, of course, is that then you're talking about, you know, trebling the length of the session, essentially, to give everyone their 2 minutes on the cameras and on the circuit. So yes, I'm sure that debate will rage on, but I don't think we'll touch it any more than what we have. Danilo Petrucci, 1 minute 32.799 leads the way in this session, less than a tenth ahead of Toprak Razgatlioglu and Alex Lowe's. Toprak looks like he's going to make a big improvement on his latest lap around. Bautista's also up. The time's continuing to tumble now. We get towards the kind of pace we might have been anticipating.
Yeah, we're almost, 50 minutes after the session started now, so conditions continue to improve as we've had no more rain, and the wind will help to dry the track as well. And you can see now for the riders that make their way down in towards turn 20 and 21 that the conditions now compared to when we started the session so much better now, but it's still going to be tricky and treacherous out there, and the big reason for that is going to be the wind, and that'll cool down the tyres. It'll also just create different challenges out there as well.
As Toprak Razgatlioglu has a little bit of challenge there, some traffic in the second half of the lap. He was 3.5 tenths up after 2 completed sectors, but he gets held back later on. It's a fast-flowing place, and if you do catch a rider in the wrong place, it can compromise your speed. I don't think there's much doubt about that.
Yeah, we saw there at the end of the lap, Tito Rabat and Bahattin Safoglu with Razgatlioglu. Toprak now clear of both of those riders, so we'll be able to see something come in from him on this lap. He lost around about 7 tenths of a second in the middle of the lap last time around in sector 3, so we haven't really seen his true pace on those first couple of laps. Bautista's top now with a 32.5, so you wouldn't be too surprised to see Toprak get himself down into the 31s at the end of this lap.
18 minutes remaining in free practice 1. Back down to pit lane with Liam Hodgins.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alex. Down in Pat at Yamaha, and I've unfortunately, John, it's been an early into the session. Can you just explain what happened out there in turn 10?
Still not a mystery, but got completely caught off guard. I really hope it was a damp patch. I felt good in the first few laps, but completely lost the rear. So I just wanted to look at the data. The traction control was covering, and all of a sudden I was completely lost. So tire temperatures were all good. So yeah, just frustrating because. But also you're lucky I was going. So I just spun and low siding the bike and sliding. So I got away from the bike. So unfortunate, but lucky at the same time.
Yeah, well, really good to see on the TV screens that you were able to walk away. Physically, are you feeling okay? Did you tweak anything? All good for the session later on?
Yeah. Star Leathers took the brunt of the crash. The bike, to be fair, wasn't so yeah, got it for the guys. They've got a bit of work on now, so for FP2, but we'll go out and try again.
Fingers crossed for the second session. Glad to hear you're okay.
16.5 minutes remaining in free practice 1. That's the main thing for Jonathan Rea, of course, is that he's okay after that spill, but compromises his Friday and therefore his start to the weekend.
Yeah, and your full weekend really is compromised by it, because you lose out in this free practice 1 session, which means that you lose out on just having the base to be able to make sure that your gear ratios or whatever else you're just trying to make sure is in the right window work. Now they'll have to do that in free practice 2. It shouldn't be a big issue for them. Obviously they've got Andrea Locatelli out there as well to be able to do the same, but for Jonathan then you suddenly lose out in that track time, you lose out in that bit of experience, and it just makes things that little bit more difficult all the time.
You could kind of get a feeling of lack of confidence as well from his comments there. I hope it was a damp patch. I mean, that's where there's a bit of doubt in the mind, and that's really rare to see for someone like Jonathan Rea.
Well, we saw it unfortunately last year from Johnny, where he was very open and honest about what he was feeling on the bike and the challenges he was facing. And for Rea, obviously he's a 6-time world champion. He's the best rider we've ever seen in the Superbike World Championship, but it's these challenges that he has to overcome on a consistent basis with the Yamaha, and it's really tough for him. But he needs to find a way to get through it. And the biggest challenge for Rea is that it all comes down to being able just to bite the tank for 1 lap in that 15-minute Super Pole session, and that's whenever he really is suffering the most from that lack of confidence.
And you can't see him struggle like he did last year and not immediately ask questions about his future. The injury at the start of this season.
Oh,
a massive crash for Nicolo Bulliger in free practice 1, 15 minutes away from the end of the session, and that's the biggest drama of this season so far. for Nicolo Bulliger. And he looks to be in some discomfort after falling as well. That really did send him dramatically into the gravel trap at speed as well. Turn 6 for Nicolo Bulliger, high-speed incident for him.
Yeah, just before where we saw Ray have his crash, a couple of corners before it, and a very similar crash in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's slightly different angles and different elements to it, but for Bulliger, you can see just how big of an impact that was. But hopefully for Nico, he's okay after that. We saw him down in the gravel trap just trying to catch his breath. But it's so rare to see high sides like that. We heard from Jonathan about the fact that the TC caught most of his, and then suddenly it wasn't there. And Bulliger's will be something similar to that, just tricky track conditions out there. But it's the cold is a big factor as well. It's 13 degrees air temperature out there. Track temperature is down. It's windy, and it can catch you out because the tyre just suddenly gets cold. And I think especially around this track, whenever you've got the harder compounds as well, it makes it even more difficult out there.
Those live pictures are what we do not want to see. Nicolo Bulliger being stretchered away from the side of the circuit. And immediately, of course, we think back to Magny-Cours last season for Toprak Razgatlioglu when he was the championship leader. We have a red flag here once again in free practice 1 as Bulliger is stretchered away from the circuit, and the bike still being recovered as well. But this could be a big moment in the season for Nicolo Bulliger, and we hope it doesn't turn out to be one, of course. Crash in free practice 1 for him. Fingers crossed everything okay for the riders who have had incidents here. We've obviously already heard from Jonathan Ray, but this is going to mean a delay here in FP1. Nicolo Bulliger, you do just wonder whether we're talking about a little bit of dampness on the lines and on the curbs out there, because we have seen a few spills in this FP1 session at different corners.
Yeah, we've seen big high sides, and you don't tend to see high sides an awful lot in World SBK anymore. Jonathan Ray's wasn't a high side, but was effectively the same. Was that loss to the rear, and he was lucky that it didn't suddenly grip and split him off. He got away relatively unscathed from his. Ian One, you'd imagine Remy Gardner's was basically the same as what we saw for Ian One as well, and then Bulliger. So there's 4 times where we've seen the riders just lose that rear, and a big reason for it will be the cold temperatures, I'm sure. And for Bulliger, it's just a really big incident there, off throttle as well, from where he has that crash, you'd imagine. So it's really difficult to be able to see for Bulliger and for Ducati what you can take from that as well. They need to be able to get him back to the medical centre, get him checked out, and then we'll have to wait and see. But that's 4 massive crashes we've had in this session.
Yes, in terms of the loss of running in FP1, we're only talking about 13.5 minutes. But the main question is how Nicolo Bulliger is after that spill, and that's the main concern for everyone, of course, in the World SBK family, but obviously particularly for Ducati, their star man, their championship leader in this 2025 campaign, has gone down rather too spectacularly in FP1. The stoppage is not for the crash itself, but for the track conditions, obviously. Again, the gravel is very close to the circuit here in Moss, so when a bike does go down, it immediately brings that gravel onto the track, and that's a safety issue. Let's see the spill again for Nicolo Bulliger.
So he's out over the curbs, and that can unsettle the bike, obviously. And then for Bulliger, it happens quite late. I thought it happened a little bit earlier in the corner than that, but you can see again just the transfer of energy there for him, and he came down heavy on it, and you can see there maybe a little bit away from that inside curb and the white line, but you can see that big impact on his hip there once he comes down, and that'll definitely knock the wind out of Bulliger, and hopefully that's all that it is for him. Obviously he'll be checked out, and we'll wait and get an update on his condition, but this is on board with him. Let's just have a listen. You can see there for him, I think it's just the fact that it's the cool temperatures and the wind, but we'll wait and see what Ducati can say about it.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll hear from Nicolo Bulliger at the end of the day as well.
Oh, and you can see there as we ride on board, I think that's Alvaro Bautista, just how high into the air Bulliger goes.
And then you'll see the reason for the stoppage. Obviously, as much as anything, it wasn't gravel, was it? There were bits of Ducati strewn around the circuits. And the faces of immediate concern, of course, because it is their star man. He's the championship leader. He's the man defending a 34-point advantage, a third of the way through the campaign. And this is one of the biggest tests of character that he has so far had. Of course, the double retirement in Assen was the first thing he had to answer back to. He did so superbly in Cremona with 3 race victories there. And now a big crash at the start of the weekend in Most. And fingers crossed for good news from Nicolo Bullica as he goes to the medical centre for a checkup. That is standard procedure, I should emphasise. Doesn't necessarily mean any injury for Bullica, but he does need to be checked after as big a spill as that. And one which ultimately has given us a red flag again here in FP1. 13.5 minutes to go when we do get underway again from this red flag. Glum faces in the Ducati pit boxes. We saw that in replay a couple of moments ago, and obviously real concern for them and for their title charge in 2025.
Yeah, and you can see for Alvaro Bautista, obviously last time out in Cremona, it was him that was having the free practice crashes. And for him, he's up there second in the times right now. And pit lane's going to open again in another 90 seconds for the last 13.5 minutes of the session. And for Bautista, he knows that this is a good opportunity for him now this weekend. He needs to make sure that he's able to be that lead Ducati and give himself that little bit of a push here at Most. And we've obviously seen him have some good races here in the past up against Toprak. But he knows that the weekend is well underway now, and you've got to make sure that you're able to take advantage of all the track time you have.
So, pit lane opens in less than a minute now for free practice 1. Let's hope that's the last red flag, because it's rather been a protracted session, hasn't it, this morning. Seeing here Michael van der Mark, he sits up in 5th place in this FP1 session. On the timesheets, it's Toprak Razgatlioglu leading. He's the only rider into the 1 minute 31s, 1:31.944 for Toprak. Bautista just over half a second behind, Petrucci close. And then, as always, the group, there's nothing really to separate them. Petrucci, 3rd position in this session, ahead of Nicolo Bullica. Obviously, he's had his crash in FP1, and Michael van der Mark, P5. Good effort from Bahatin Sofoglu just before the red flag. 1:32.781 from Sofoglu. He's up in P6 in the session.
Yeah, and for Bahatin, we saw that he was out there just behind Toprak on the track, so able to use his friend as a good guide around here in Most as well. Obviously, trying to learn on a superbike for the first time. You can see there for the Czech fans, everyone's fairly well wrapped up here this weekend so far, and you can see the wind in the background with the trees. It is very different conditions to what we've had in the past here. Obviously, we're coming to Most a lot earlier in the year than at the height of summer like we've been in recent years.
Well, it's 13 degrees according to the information we've got, but you're still in your shorts, I'm still in my t-shirt, so the Czech fans might be wrapped up, and certainly the team from Catalonia are well wrapped up. There was someone wearing 5 layers yesterday, and I was quite comfortable out in my polo shirt for my pre-weekend stand-up. But anyway,
it's nice and warm in the commentary box.
Yeah, it's very warm in the commentary box. Session underway again. Let's see who heads out this time in these early minutes. Detail on your screen about the fuel flow adjustment. And just wanted to comment further on that. We talked about it a little bit earlier on, but in terms of how it affects the bike, and particularly for Ducati, obviously as the championship leaders at the moment, with Nicolo Bullica, his comments yesterday saying that, you know, it's particularly noticeable on gear changes on the angle, and just explain to people back home what impact that's going to have over the course of a lap for him. Yeah,
Bullica's first comments about losing some of the fuel flow was that it suddenly made the bike feel a little bit dirty compared to how clean it is whenever it's unrestricted. It's not really making a big impact in terms of your performance potential out there, but it is making an impact in terms of the feel that you have. And if you're trying to make gear changes on the angle as you accelerate out of a corner and you don't quite have that right feeling in the wrist as you open up the gas, maybe then for Bullica it's just giving him that little bit more of a challenge. For Ducati, the reason that they pushed to have the extra 500 revs on the bike last year was in all likelihood because they knew that this rule was coming, and they wanted to try and have something that would balance it out for them a little bit. And for the changes that we've seen, having the extra 500 revs makes a big difference because it saves you gear shifts through the course of a lap, and then obviously you'll lose some of your performance potential by not having quite the same fuel flow. But on balance, I think that for Ducati, there's a reason that they agreed to the changes, and they don't tend to do too many changes if it hurts their technical package.
You saw a couple of moments ago on the screen, new class, new lightweight class for the next season in World SBK. Of course, it was announced a while ago that Supersport 300 had run its course and was set to be discontinued. So sport bike class for next season, and obviously more news is going to filter through in the coming weeks, but it certainly aligns everything in terms of the naming, doesn't it? Superbike, Supersport and Sport Bike. For next season, and new colours and branding and so on as well. But the Supersport 300 class, it served well after the first couple of seasons, you know, just getting it up to speed. It has produced riders that have gone on to other classes, and you only need to look at Bahattin Sofoglu, we were talking about a couple of moments ago, as an example of that. There are opportunities for more bikes and more manufacturers to appear in the new sport bike class in the future.
Yeah, 300 was derided at different times, and the fact of the matter is Bahattin Sofoglu's won a super sport race. Andy Verdoyo won a super sport race in pretty crazy circumstances. But more than anything else, you look at Adrian Huertas winning the Supersport World Championship last year. Manu Gonzalez is leading the Moto2 World Championship. It showed that you could take riders from that class that, for whatever reason, didn't have the opportunities that their talent deserved. And some of that could be trying to raise a budget. Some of that could just be where you are at any moment in your career. But if you were able to show that you could do something in the 300s, there were and have been a few riders that have really been able to kick on from that. And that was the progression, that was the goal for the class. It's not about finding 50 riders in a championship class like that. It's about being able to find the right riders. And 300s, it'll be replaced by sports bike, and it'll be interesting to see how that change takes into effect for the groups and the size of the battles that we see. That's probably been the one thing that's been probably needed to change from 300s, and it'll be interesting with the sport bike class to see what happens from that. But it'll also be one of those things where they then need to make sure that they're still creating a talent pipeline there as well, like we saw for 300s.
Toprak Razgatlioglu leads FP1 with 9 minutes remaining. He is the only rider at the moment into the 1 minute 31s. He's got over half a second advantage over Alvaro Bautista and Danilo Petrucci. Petrucci just making his way round through the final 2 sectors on his installation lap. The other 2 leaders up and running. Bahattin Sofoglu was on a good lap there after 2 completed sectors. He's backed out of it after sector 3, but maybe this is a coming of age weekend for Bahattin Sofoglu, because that one good lap, you know, that puts him ahead of Sam Lowe's, Locatelli, some big names there, and he was on another good lap next time around as well, a few tenths of a second down after the first 2 sectors.
It's FP1.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the rest of the weekend goes firm. But
hey, we've got excited about Tito Rabat after free practice before. I think we could do it for Bahattin Sofoglu. But to be fair to him, he has done a solid job this season. If you're facing Tito Rabat, who's an experienced rider at this stage of his career, and you're beating him on the regular, you know, he's fighting with Garrett Gerloff, who's been a podium finisher in World SBK in the past. I think he deserves his moment, and the excuse is the fact that he's up in P6 here.
Bahattin's done a really good job this year, and it's always interesting whenever you talk to the other Turkish riders about him, because Toprak is very open about what he thinks about pretty much everything. If you ask Toprak a question, you're going to get his opinion. And he says that there's nobody that works harder than Bahattin. He's not the most talented rider out there, but my God, he gets everything he can out of himself. And we saw that in the Super Sport class. And I think we've been able to see it already in the first 6 months that he's been a Superbike rider. He's just a guy that wants to perform as well as he can. He's leaving nothing to chance out there. And he's been able to do a pretty solid job. He's outperformed Tito. And that's the first goal, really, whenever you're out there. And he's done a solid job, really, just jumping on from an MV Agusta Super Sport bike onto the Superbike. And at the end of the day, you're with the Moto X team. You're not with one of the top teams, and he's been able to show that he warrants his spot in the grid.
Toprak Razgatlioglu on a hot lap here, just making his way through the final sector, 10th of a second up compared to his previous best, of course. This looks like being faster than anyone else has gone again, and it's faster than he's gone before as well. Finds a lot of time in that final sector, Toprak. 1 minute 31.687. So again, half a second faster than anyone else because Danilo Petrucci's just slotted in with a new personal best, a 1:32.241. Alvaro Bautista third fastest in this session. So we see Sam Lowes with a bit of a wobble coming off the final turn. He makes his way for an improved lap up into fourth position ahead of Nicolo Bullock, who obviously is out of this session after his earlier spill. So Sam Lowes now 8/10 down. We're getting a flurry of hot laps here, as we often do, about 5 or so minutes from the end of the session.
And Barton's moving further down the time sheet.
Yes, all right, you made your point. But he's got a new personal best first sector, Steve. Only 3/10 of a second down.
I do mean it in jest, because I am very impressed by Barton, and I have been for a few years. He's a rider, again, that's come up through the 300 ranks, and 300 was a great class and is a great class to be able to see who's got raw speed and who's brave. And obviously Bahatin's shown himself to be a very brave rider over the years. And then when he moved on to the super sport class, he was able to show that he was hard-working and intelligent. Because
Locker! And another big spill in free practice 1, and this time it's Andrea Locatelli who crashes out. 5.5 minutes to go, and immediately back up to his feet, which is good news, but some heavy crashes this morning in Most.
Yeah, and again, it's another time where we see that rear being lost there for the rider, and he gets thrown over the top. Ray's crash, the only one where he didn't get high-sided over, but effectively had a high side. So for Locatelli, it's the same, and you're coming through turn 16 and 17 here. Just have a look at the rear now as he cracks open the gas, and it just comes around on him as well. And you know, like Locke has been able to do 20 laps in this session, so it's not like the conditions have caught him out there. And that's the 5th big crash we've had in this session.
Our rider's just dealing with less grip than they were expecting. Is it the harder tyres? Is it what, you know, there's so many factors that could be playing a part here this morning, but it's almost unprecedented.
It is unprecedented. This is like looking at 500s in the late 80s and early 90s, where you had these series of big crashes and big high sides. We're not used to seeing that anymore. Traction control and electronics are so advanced here in World SBK that they catch everything, really. And for all of these riders, there's something getting caught out. We're out there with the harder compound tyres, that's a factor. We're out here in 15 degrees air temperature, track temperature's low, there's a strong wind. That the wind has the impact on the tyres because it cools the outside of the carcass, and then as you start to put more and more heat through it, you've then got the thermal build-up from that as well. It's a big challenge for everyone to be able to find that balance out there, and unfortunately we've seen so many riders caught out by it. And the fact of the matter is, these are all top riders as well. You've got Jonathan Ray, 6-time world champion. Locatelli is a Supersport world champion. The red flag's just come out again as well. Ian One is a MotoGP race winner, and we've seen all these riders crash. Gardner, a Moto2 world champion, has crashed as well. It's not like we're looking at track day riders. These are the top guys in the world, and they're all getting caught out by the same kind of conditions.
Red flag with less than 4 minutes to go in FP1. I can tell you the session has been declared, so that will be your final results for FP1. And although I'm never very partisan, as you know, Steve, you've put me in the Bahatin Sofoglu fan club this morning, and he's finished in the top 10 in FP1. So there we go. Toprak Razgatlioglu tops the timesheets ahead of Danilo Petrucci and Alvaro Bautista.
Just to say as well, we're hearing from the pits as well. Liam's been down chatting to a few different teams and riders about what's the situation out there, and what they've said is that there's a combination of the cool temperatures and the cool wind, and then also just the track is a little bit dirty. Obviously, Moss doesn't get used as much as some of the other tracks that we visit through the course of the year. We've had the overnight rain, so a greasy track condition and the cool temperatures, and the wind is just probably playing that big role.
Yeah, certainly pretty rarely used for bike racing, as we say. World SBK, the premier category of racing that comes to the Autodrome. Let's take you through the 3-2-1 as always then. Alvaro Bautista makes his way back into the pits, 1 minute 32.425 for him. He's leading the way as far as the Aruba squad are concerned after the earlier crash for Nicolo Bullock. It is only going to be the spills that everyone is talking about after this session, I'm afraid. Toprak Razgatlioglu making his way back in. He is P1. Danilo Petrucci is already back in his pit box, and he was the man who finished in second. So Razgatlioglu with the upper hand in FP1, but not in the way that anyone would have hoped for. Never nice to see riders crashing out, but there have been a lot of alarming spills. It's going to take some while, I think, to get to the bottom of what we've just seen, because that was really, we used the word unprecedented a couple of times. So rare for riders of this class to be crashing out, dropping like flies really this morning. Top Rack Razgatlioglu has survived unscathed and more than half a second faster than anyone else in FP1. So things going to plan as far as he and BMW are concerned, but not for some of the big riders in this class. Andrea Iannone with the first of the crushes. Obviously, we lost Remy Gardner. We lost two of the top two in the World Championship with Andrea Locatelli, the last man to crash out, prompting that red flag, and Niccolo Bulliger, the current championship leader. So it's Razgatlioglu, Petrucci and Bautista, your three fastest men in FP1 this morning. Stint summary then for Top Rack. Obviously everyone's going to have a lot of stints because of the number of red flags, but Top Rack, just for the record, fourth stint, 1 minute 31.687, his fastest time. Danilo Petrucci 1:32.241 for him for second place. And Top Rack and Alvaro Bautista rather third fastest at 1:32.425 on his final lap. Right, let's look at the sectors. 3 of the 4 topped by Top Rack Razgatlioglu. The first 3, 21.8 then in Sector 1. Iker Lecuona and Xavi Vierque both appearing there. That's interesting. Sector 2. Top Rack again fastest, as I said. Alex Lowe's and Bahattin Sofoglu were third fastest in the second sector. Sector 3, Razgatlioglu, Sam Lowe's and Danilo Petrucci, all within a tenth of a second of one another there. And the final sector is the only one that doesn't belong to Top Rack this morning. Alvaro Bautista, fastest with a 23.2, but only by 3 thousandths ahead of Top Rack Razgatlioglu.